So I want to see a discussion now. These are some questions that I have that I'm just going to read them off and give you an idea of the kind of things I want to talk about. I have opinions on all of these, but my opinion doesn't really matter. It's your opinion that does. So the first one is kind of an issue, is how do we decide which events are Division One? I've been kind of free-forming this and like just picking events based on what I felt was right. But I want to hear what you guys have to say about it. Some of the issues that I've had in the past have been like events that have not run before. They're not the first time events. It's really difficult to know if it's going to be successful or if I'm even going to be able to walk away with meaningful rankings. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about how to make schools Division One. Yeah, so the reason we have Division One is because out of all those 35 or 40 events that are posted on the website, it's really difficult to collect accurate rankings. And that's no one's fault in particular, but there has to be some kind of way to either collect that data in a meaningful way that we know is accurate, or limit it to situations where there's enough diversity in schools that it's actually meaningful. So an example of this might be if your school has a hackathon but it's only open to students from your school, that data is not great for rankings because of course your school won. There's no competition. And in the same light, events that are more regional, so maybe there's only 3 to 5 schools, that really limits the amount of diversity we have as well. Where if all the events have the same amount of points, they can walk away with one school coming out way on top, even though winning at MHAX when there's 100 schools might be a different meaning. So that's kind of why I made this distinction. I'd love to hear if anybody has thoughts on this. I know there's a lot of you in this room who do.
So my question is, why have a Division One at all? Why not have any hackathon that's able to bring other schools in or open to the public, be a Major League Hacking hackathon, as long as they conform to some sort of preset code of conduct that is already set up on the MLH website, and scale the amount of points that each hackathon gets to their attendance. So MHAX is a huge hackathon that brings a lot of students in. It should be worth more than like HackRU that probably brings in half as much. It just sort of makes sense to me that way.
So the response I would have to that is that size is not equal quality. Winning at Hack NY, even though it might not be the diverse group that it may be at MHAX or PennApps, I actually think that holds a lot of value, right? I'm assuming the community does as well. I could be totally offbeat on that, but I'm assuming that the quality of the event actually has a lot to do with it. Also, when size is the limiting factor, there becomes a struggle for like who gets tickets, right? Is it about money? Well, the University of Maryland, the school is paying for a lot of the buses or whatever, right? Something like that might happen. Does that make them, and they can go to more events, does that make them a better team than everybody? Not necessarily. So picking events that have a good diversity of schools was kind of one of the things I had in mind.
So it seems pretty arbitrary at this point, other than like the mega hackathons get Division One.
I mean, so I argued for Division One pretty strongly when Swift was considering this. One minimal reason you sort of have to have several tiers is because at some point you're going to talk to sponsors, like for example the API tier, and like some of these events are just going to be like, I mean, we run these events, some of them just like screw up. And once MLH has a reputation, you start thinking about like, hey, we're using this as a proxy for like helping first-time events get funding that they wouldn't have otherwise gotten because we're putting the brand on there. You start needing to worry that you make sure that these are quality events. The other thing is if you look at just like tennis or you look at like the World Poker Tour, like it's a pretty standard format to have like a bunch of majors and then like a lot of smaller events. And partially it's an advising thing where like, hey, I'm going to go to like 2 or 3 hackathons this semester. Like, which ones would you recommend? Again, it's a useful tool for students as well. So those were some of my arguments.
So who would be the person that's judging this?
That is the question. I think that, yes, there's 2 parts of this, and I may have not alluded to this properly, but there's one issue which is rankings, meaning how do we determine like Division 1 versus Division 2 in terms of which schools are ranked. The other, I guess, more important issue is like, okay, there's 30 events out here. At some point, we're putting a seal of approval saying this event is awesome. And it's not about like, you're throwing a first-time event, so we think your event's not going to be great. It's that like we are setting some kind of standard saying like, yes, this event is, we have certain, we believe it's going to be awesome, right? Or whatever we're saying.
So I have I don't know, maybe a solution idea. It's not fully worked out, but I think there's something to it. What if for choosing which events are Division 1, it's based on merit? So I feel lucky that BitCamp got to be a Division One hackathon because we're kind of at the end. We're like almost the last one besides LA Hacks, and so we weren't Division One early on. We kind of just confirmed that recently. So I feel lucky, and we could have taken longer to get that. And so what would have happened if we did not get Division One and it was merit based, and you gave Division One hackathons to schools who earn it with their hackers at other hackathons? We would have brought it. We would have brought the heat.
Yeah, we'll kind of go. There's another question down the road that I think will help answer that, but I agree that that's where we need to get to. It's some kind of merit-based system. It'll take us time to get there, but I don't think we're there now, which is my real issue, is that we need to figure out something in the short term.
And just, maybe to go off of that, it could be merit-based, on your for your hackers getting points at other hackathons, and also the actual hackathon that you put on. That could be, maybe you could say like once per season, everybody send in what your plan, your project outline for your hackathon, and then you can decide based on that. That's something you could have everybody submit, like, here's what we're going to do, here's our plan, we're going to execute this. If it's awesome enough, you choose a top 10 for Division 1 or something.
Yeah, that's where I would also like to be, but the truth is, how many of you are planning your event right now and really don't know what's going to happen, right? Hack Tech was been planned out for months. Like, I was a part of the planning, and it totally, when the day of, the plan was so different than where we were, that happens to everybody, though. It's not just them, right? It's all of us. We say we're going to walk away with like the big house or the Rose Bowl, and 3 months down the road, suddenly we're looking at the top of a mall, and it's like, okay, that's great, but plans don't necessarily always work out. I'd like to see them always work out, but they don't.
That's all, just some ideas.
No, I appreciate them. Thank you.
So I kind of maybe want to talk about maybe 5 or 6 years down the road, I think we're going to see some consolidation in the hackathon thing. Just the idea of having a hackathon every single week maybe doesn't make a lot of sense. And so I was thinking about maybe moving to something like an Angel Hack model where you have remote locations that are all competing in kind of the same thing, and that would be divided by geography almost. So you would just go to the whatever location was closest to you versus having to bus to a really far location. And I think if the entire point is promoting, I guess hackers and building cool stuff, maybe that makes more sense in terms of pulling resources versus having these little hackathons everywhere every week.
So have a regional style model where every event counts for points, and then take the people who compete in these more than regional events, like national events, based on the winners of those. Interesting. Okay. I think the only issue I have with that is that your winners might not be right now we're attributing value to schools, right? Not necessarily individual teams. And I really want to stay away from ranking teams against each other because, like I said earlier, I don't think that winning a hackathon makes you any better than any other hacker in the room. I think it there's value to it, but it's not like a seal of you're awesome. It's just that day you walked away with winner, and the person who lost is not necessarily worse than you either.
I don't mean a tournament style thing. I meant more instead of tiny hackathons everywhere, we'd have just bigger ones that happen almost on the same weekend instead of having to
Sure.
worry about
So regional events in different locations. I actually like that a lot. I was going to suggest that in a little bit. That's true. We could test it in April. Interesting. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Matthew. I'm organizing Hack Illinois. So I'm a first-year hackathon organizer, and we're a pretty big school. We're a big CS school, and we've got a strong program. So we're going big to start off, and Dave's been super helpful and super supportive there. So one of the things that's been a little frustrating about MLH and sort of the Division 1 stuff for us is that hearing about this API tier and hearing about the escrow services, it's all sort of been secondhand, and it hasn't really been through an open community, which I think is what's really cool about MLH, right? You organize this HackCon thing, and it's great, and I've got to meet a lot of really cool people. But at the same time, a lot of it's sort of done in an unofficial Google Doc, and it sort of seems exclusive, which is a little frustrating. And the Division 1 stuff, for example, I think is Hadar back there? He's talking to Corey. So LA Hacks announced the same weekend as Hack Illinois, and it's not a contest. And I heard that you guys tried to get off, and we should talk. Actually, I want to do a video chat thing between our events. But anyways, and I know RU is going to announce the same weekend and such, and so it's a little frustrating for our staff, even though I've really expressed, look, it's not a contest. We're going to try to work with them to see this Division 1 thing come up, and they've got it, and we don't. And even though we're a first-time event, I think that whatever the answer to this question is, it should be defined, clear, and open.
I totally agree. Honestly, like I said, that comes back to the whole bottleneck issue is these are a lot of things I want to do, but you got to remember my inbox is a disaster, and
Yeah,
it always
I
will
can
be. And I
imagine.
need to figure this out, and I need to delegate better. And like I said, I'm taking all of this information and processing it, and I'm gonna make.
Yeah, we
work
saw
it.
you're hiring an intern. We laughed. Anyways, so to actually answer the question, I think that what you brought up before is good. I think a past history of how an event has actually gone would make sense as long as it's enforced consistently.
I agree.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Like one of the things I'm seeing already is like a lot of the resources we have are being limited because we're spending way too much money on things that we could spend a lot less. Like if we're spending 120K on a venue, like Wi-Fi and all this stuff, like that stuff we could have spent 50K on or something like that. And it may not like look that bad to you, but like when there are other hackathons, like 20 or 30 other hackathons in the same season, they're not all gonna get that same amount of money. Like you're reducing the money for that other hackathons get. And I think one of the, like going back to this question, like which hackathon should be Division 1, like there needs to be some sort of rate limiting in terms of like there should only be like 15 hackathons per season, and then next season, like one season MHacks would be in spring and they'd be the Division 1, and then there'd be another chance for the other hackathon and like to be part of the next season. And that also means like in the sense we should only have like 15 hackathons per season because we're at the point where having more than one hackathon per weekend, and that not only splits up sponsors, that also like splits up the number of hackers we're sending. Whether you're on like the West Coast or East Coast, there are a lot of times the companies are sending the same amount of same people, and like usually we're the same hackers going to each event, and like we don't want to go to an event like maybe every week. So I think it's going to be a problem unless we start like lowering the number of events we have each season, or like doing something like that, because we're wasting a lot of money sometimes, like, and it's not going to look out good for us if we keep wasting it.
So I agree that there's saturation. I think that, you know, in my head, I don't want to ever be the guy who says, like, you can't throw a hackathon. That's retarded, right? Like, what we really want here is an open community where everybody can do this kind of thing. And everybody can throw a hackathon for their school. And I want that. I really do. That's the world that I would love to see, is that every single school, you know, out there had a hackathon of some kind. It may not be huge. It might be 10 people in a room. It might be a hack weekend or a hack night or whatever you want to call it. But, like, that value, I think, is really important.
I'm thinking more along the lines of like not like you can't throw a hackathon, but more like see if you can host it next season instead of.
Dave's point is that the demand is there. There's people. It's just a function of, you know, more events equals more people.
But I think one of the important.
I'm going to jump to the next question because we have a lot to cover. Sorry. So scoring is one of the bottlenecks. I think that this is something that we might actually skip this question, and I might open this up over email or over some kind of blog post. But for the main season, I gave every event 1,000 points. For the postseason, I gave events 100 points per 100 hackers, up to 1,000. Neither of them I'm really happy with. I would love to hear community thoughts on how to do scoring better and how to actually rank these events for schools. I'm not happy with my model, and I think that there's a better algorithm out there. But I'm going to skip this one for discussion, just in the interest of time. So I think that this comes to like back to what we were just talking about in a lot of ways, is what's our vision for the future? You know, maybe it's possible for every single one of us to throw the hackathon that we dream of, you know, with 1,000 people or 800 or whatever your number is, pick it. Maybe we can compete for these weekends or something like that. But I think that in the interest of scaling us into the future, there's ways that we can work together to either do maybe regional events or national events. I think that it would be really interesting to get all of the hackathons that are in specific areas to collaborate together. I know that there was some discussion at some point about Hack Duke and Hack NC and like all those North Carolina region events like working together to do one giant North Carolina event. I really like that idea. I think if we kind of, you know, do something along those lines where there's regional events that we all work together on, there's a lot more power. I would love to hear people's thoughts on that and other ways that we can change this in the future.
So we've talked about a lot of different aspects of hackathons, the future, and all that kind of stuff. But there's an 8-letter word that I think has been missing, and maybe it's my imagination, maybe it's not a real problem, but like I was saying, there's an 8-letter word that's been missing from the discussion so far, and that's cheating. I don't know how much of this is a problem this has been, but I know just, you know, going to hackathons, people talk, and it's kind of like, what does cheating mean at a hackathon? Is cheating your demo doesn't actually represent the stuff that you built? Is cheating starting beforehand? And especially if we're going to scale these up and they're more impressive and there's more of them, I think that's a really important conversation to have. I put a little card in the back, so maybe you don't want to talk about it now if it's... Yeah, but I think it's a really important conversation to have at some point.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So I understand that Major League Hacking is sort of moving forward. Moving forward becomes this very cool platform where all these hackathons can come together and, you know, promote each other and create a community, right? And so my question really is, what if sometime down the line that some smaller school wants to set up a hackathon, but they don't make it to the platform? At sometime in the future, you have D1, D2, D3, what? Right? And some small school wants to set up a hackathon, and they go up to sponsors, and the sponsors are like, hey, you're not on Major League Hacking. Go away, kind of thing, right?
Sure.
What happens then?
Yeah, I mean, I realize that that could be a problem, and I'm sort of trying to figure out a way around that as well. I don't want this to become a boys' club, and like literally in the sense of like an exclusive group that cuts out everybody. I'd never want that to happen. I imagine a future where Major League Hacking might actually be the one who's sponsoring you for your smaller event. Maybe not the community, maybe that's not everybody's vision, but like I would love to see a day where, you know, some small school that no one's ever heard of comes to me and says, hey, we want to throw a hackathon. And I say, great, you get 10K, go make it happen. And they just do it, right? And they execute, and it's a great event, and every kid at that school who's never been to a hackathon before gets to go to one. That's a world that I would like to live in. But
Cool.
and I never want to cut people out. And if I ever cut somebody out, I want people to call me on it. I really do. Because my goal is not to cut anybody in this room out or anybody out there, you know.
Just my opinion on this, I think the huge explosion in hackathons recently is because there's no people organizing hackathons. There's no gatekeeper saying, no, you can't organize this. Or I think any centralization of hackathons, for the most part, MLH is great for the help and stuff, but if you're going to start to say when people can have hackathons, where they can have them, it gets to the point where someone new who's going to have the best hackathon ever might be limited to it. And then there's also something to be said about competitions. That's how startups work, and that's why they're so great.
No, I totally agree with that. I think that like my goal, like I said, is not to be a dictator saying this is when you can do this is when you can do this. I would love for it to be a transparent process where we all like get together and vote or talk about it or figure it out as a community. That would be my ideal.
So the biggest issue that I see with hackathons right now is that like when you go to a hackathon, you see so many cool ideas, but then for some reason, when you go a month later, you don't see any of them out on like the real market. Maybe you see like one of them that like actually turned into a company, even though you have so much talent concentrated in one area. So I think we need to do a better job of getting people to actually bring their ideas to market and finding ways to encourage them to actually make something of their ideas.
I agree. And I think that those are initiatives that we can work on together to like figure these things out. I think that, again, a lot of it, I want it to come from a mailing list that I put together with everybody in this room on it. I think there's a lot of value that can be had there.
So I think there's the value of having small hackathons is being kind of overshadowed by like this desire to be becoming 1,000-person events that everyone has. I look at small hackathons as really great things because I can go to my local startups, my incubators in the area, and tell them, hey, come to my stuff. I'm not necessarily like fighting for attention from Twilio or whoever. And so what I'd really like for MLH to do is to build kind of a set of tools, to have a toolkit, an organizer's toolkit. Right now, most of my advice has come from just knowing members in the community, and the members in the community are phenomenal for giving advice out. But again, it's like I had to, actually be introduced to them. I had to find that, and so if we had some tools, metrics, apps, whatever,
Totally.
that were available and open source that we could, maintain as a community and give to those smaller people that want to start.
I think that when me and you spoke on the phone a couple months ago, I mentioned that I was going to work on this. One of my things I really want to work on in the coming weeks is an organizer's toolbook. I'd love for it to be open source, and I'd love everybody's help on doing that. I'm going to throw it up on the MLH GitHub, just generic Markdown wiki style stuff, and I would love for all of us to contribute and make that really awesome.
Yeah, so something that I really love about this community is that it is a community and it's not political in any way, if that makes sense. And I'm going to tell you an anecdote. I come from a debater background, and debate is controlled by a central APTA board. And the way that we decide dates for tournaments is that everyone sits down in a room one day and decides it for the next year, right? But this is a company with so much political wheeling and dealing. You get favored dates based on like who likes who at the time. You get a lot of resentment based on dates. You get teams stuck with really, really crappy dates that they can't do anything about. Like you cannot hold a tournament if it's not in that date. And that's something I just want to make sure that I love about this community, that is that it's not like that. It's very open and very much everyone talks through things. And you do have that competitive aspect where if you want to do it, then you can do it. And that's what's really cool. So I just want to make sure that when we consider that central sort of planning, that we keep that into consideration.
I totally agree. I think that some kind of like suggested bidding system for like weekends might be an answer where it's not forced, right? Like not dictated and mandated, but suggested and community-based might be interesting.
I think the tool set idea is very, very apt. We have a series of talks in our discussion tomorrow morning about newbies, which I think is like a really, really important part. There's a bunch of people who can go to hackathons and get something out of it, and it's people studying CS that have like done enough, and then like really, really smart autodidacts, right? And then like people with some amount of background that like can pick things up at a hackathon. But we like this newbie onboarding, we screw it up a lot and like really, really hard, and we keep overselling it that you're gonna show up to a hackathon and just like you will magically learn Python in the first 30 minutes and then CSS in the next 30 minutes, right? Like, and then your iPhone app will be done by like midnight, and then you're gonna go like ice skate, right? And we haven't solved this. Like nobody. I mean, we'll have a discussion tomorrow morning, but nobody has solved this, and it's the kind of thing that we can do a better job of together. And once we solve it, we can actually make a legitimate pitch and make our community bigger, because it's not just people that have got like at least a reasonable amount of programming plus like brilliant autodidacts.
Totally.
Okay, so this is more of like kind of in a response to the tool set and everything. I just want to say that VT Hacks is actually going to be pushing out like every single document and conversation that we've ever had, like except for sponsorship contacts. We will be pushing out everything that we've ever had after our hackathon. We will also be pushing out source code for our website and all that. So we're basically going to just be an open source hackathon, so that if anybody wants to look like at what we've gone through, you can, and we'll make it very, very open and transparent for everybody.
I think it's a great idea. I think open source is a great tool for this.
When you asked this question, it kind of seemed obvious to me. Who here follows like NCAA sports? Anybody? No? Okay. Well, maybe that's why the solution isn't as obvious. So basically what the NCAA has done a really, really good job of is creating these like conferences of competition, right? So the Big Ten was originally 10 schools who played football against each other, and there was rivalries, and they just competed it, and they became famous, right? People know the Big Ten. People go to school because it's the Big Ten. Literally, you attend these schools because they're part of the Big Ten. Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan State, Michigan, we're all part of the Big Ten. And now we have new people in the Big Ten because it was a conference. It was prestigious and people wanted to join it. And then you have at the end of the year the bowl season where conferences go like against each other. The Rose Bowl, Big Ten and Pac-12. Pac-14. No, yeah, Pac-14. 12. Wow. Anyway, so it only makes sense for there to be like all Division I sports, right? Everyone is a Division I hackathon. However, you have conferences in which you compete, and there's conference championships, and you kind of like make everyone inclusive, but conferences are the separation rather than like divisions.
I like that. I think that also solves a lot of our problems in terms of figuring out what like dates and stuff, as long as things aren't in the conferences aren't.
So just real quick before we close today, I just want to say something. It's not a zero-sum game. We're really just scaling so quickly that we're running into a lot of these like bottlenecks. A lot of the funding is this big bottleneck, and we almost feel like it is that type of thing. But in reality, like we're just figuring out how to scale this thing. Mike is figuring out a bunch of stuff, and coming together, this is going to be a big thing. And we're going to figure out how to scale this to the next level. Like this is just the start. A year ago, today was the first MHacks, and like I can't believe how far we've come since then. And it's not. It just blows my mind. Just in a year from now, like we're gonna have figured out so many other things to continue to scale that there's no reason we have to stop here. So we can just keep getting this a lot bigger.
Bravo! I think you deserve a round of applause for that. That's fucking awesome. All right, I'm not gonna take questions on these last discussion on these last questions, but I'd love to have you guys email me if you have answers to these. But what other services can MLH offer you? My goal here is to help you guys make your lives a lot easier. I would love to hear what you're thinking. Swift@mlh.io. That's it. Thank you everybody for attending today. We really appreciate you coming out.